Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Parallax Abstraction and welcome to Retro Flashback, showcasing gaming's roots for a new generation. Well, it's been a while, hasn't it? But I am back with another weird NES gem for you, actually. This is a title that was recommended to me by user Mantid from the Gamers with Jobs forums. It's one that I missed back in the day, but well, it's interesting, I'll tell you what. So thanks for that, buddy. So today we are looking at Pinball Quest for the NES. This is, well, I'll show you these things, but here's the meat of it. It's an RPG with pinball. No, really. Seriously. Check this out. It's got a story, such as it is, and everything, but it's a pinball RPG. When I heard about that, I was like, yeah, I gotta take a look at this thing at some point. It's... yeah. So as you probably saw on the main menu there... wow. Yes, I do. So as you probably saw on the main menu there, this does have some traditional pinball stuff in it. Wow, I'm bad at this tonight. But the meat of this game is actually the quest mode, which is what we're looking at right here. And it's kind of cool. It's... well, basically your goal is to save this kingdom. And as you can see, there's actually dialogue in it, and I'm going to see if I can try to get to it here, but there's actually shopping and items and combat, as it were, and the whole bit in this game. It's really interesting. It's also fairly challenging, so I may have to cut in and out a little bit here, but we'll see how this goes. Maybe I'll get lucky. Though from my start, I don't know about that. So this is an interesting title. It's a one-off, and it's made by, well, not who you would expect. So you may have seen the main credit on this game is Jalico, which is a company that if you're a more modern gamer, you've probably not really heard of. Oh, shoot, I missed it. So I'll get into that in a second. So Jalico was a pretty prolific developer in the Nintendo and Super Nintendo era. They had a lot of early successes on 8-bit systems, and then they continued to develop games for a number of years after that, but they never really found their feet after that. They had a string of titles that were not very good and thus didn't do very well, and it ultimately killed them, sort of, and then they got bounced around between owner to owner to owner to owner, and now they're actually a company principally called MCOM Holdings, I believe it is, and, well, their main business now is real estate and finance. They have nothing to do with video games at all. This happens a lot in Japan. A lot of companies diversify and get into all kinds of businesses you wouldn't expect, and when one business fails, they just move on to something else, and that's kind of what Jalico did. But potentially the more interesting story of this game is it was actually developed by a company that has been around for a long time, basically since 1979, which is the year that I was born. Yes, I'm that old. And you've probably never heard of them, but they have their hands in over 1,000 different games. They're a company called Tosei, mostly known as Tosei Software, and they are a company that has developed a ton of different games or worked on different games in a support or consultancy role. And their entire business model is based around being behind the scenes and not being credited. It's a really fascinating thing. You know, in the video game industry, the general rule is you want your name on stuff when you work on it because, well, that's how you get more work, right? And that's how you get noticed. And people don't like to not be credited for anything. But Tosei actually doesn't like to be credited. They say that their vision is their client's vision, and they do everything they can to adhere to that. They are not interested in being creatively credited for anything. And indeed, they weren't on this game, and they've actually only, despite having worked on over 1,000 different games, they've only been developed on or they've only been credited, I should say, on a tiny handful of the stuff that they've worked on, and usually only by like having their corporate name and a copyright notice or something of that nature. It's really, really fascinating, but they've developed a lot of stuff. Some of it good, some of it very memorable, some of it sort of, I don't know. This might be one of the I don't knows. But it's really interesting. So, that being said here, so you saw that I moved into a different screen there, and I had very different objectives. My goal in that first screen was just to clear my way up here, and then after that I had some skeletons to take out, which has since morphed into a sort of boss skeleton, if you will. And this is what's neat about this game is it's very, very light RPG mechanics and tropes, but there you go. But it's pinball, and what you're trying to do is basically complete a light RPG style quest with combat and the whole bit, but doing it with pinball. It's really weird. And as you can see there, I was able to go back and forth between the two screens, and you may have seen there that the flippers were and now look at this. I'm a little self-moving pinball. And we have a marketplace. So you may have seen there that I had the ability to, or that the flippers were moving between the screens as I was moving. That was actually me. You actually have control of that. Simply by pushing up and down on the D-pad, you have the ability to move the flippers between the different screens. And indeed, that's frequently required because if you obviously have to keep yourself propelled in each area. So it's kind of managing... It's a little bit different than traditional pinball because you're actually managing the placement of your accelerants, which is kind of interesting. So as you see here in this area, which is actually a black market, you earn gold by hitting bumper objects and by defeating enemies. And you can see in the bottom left there what I've got. And you can buy these different types of stoppers and flipper upgrades. And basically, unfortunately, I can't afford any better flippers. Why do I keep saying slippers? But it allows you to basically enhance the experience and make levels easier to get through. You can also attempt to steal from the black market. If you can pull this off, this is basically a dice roll. If you can pull this off, you will get a whole bunch of fat loot. If you fail, you'll lose a bunch of your gold. What the hell? I'm actually not sure what it's doing here. Pretty sure I got caught. Yep. So you see I lost half my gold and got sent packing. So, oh well. And now you see we're at a totally different level here with different level design, different combat mechanics, different the whole bit. And this is what's kind of neat about this game. So you're going to see there in the bottom left on the little UI there, we have a numeric value, which is the enemy's, basically the enemy's health, and AT, which is my attack power. So this game, at least in this traditional mode, doesn't have any lives. So you actually, if I fail this, I just get the opportunity to retry pretty much ad infinitum. But the more times I have to retry, the lower that attack power gets. So you can always beat the level, but if you're not careful, you're definitely going to make it harder on yourself if you fail out too often. And in some ways, you actually are incentivized to try to keep things going. Okay, so I got sent back to the shop. I don't really have a lot more money, but let's see. Maybe, can I afford a flipper? No. You know what? Let's be bold. Come on. Nah, pretty sure I got the beats. Yeah, I did. Oh, well. And I got sent back down again. Bah! So, you can retry usually quite a bit, but I'm actually not sure what happened there. I kind of went through the world. But yeah, basically you will also lose attack power the more times you fail out, and obviously you don't want that either. So, but you are incentivized in some ways for trying to hang on longer in levels if you can, because... Whoops. Let's put that out there. So I'm allowed to put up one of my bumpers there, which I just lost because I did it at a stupid moment. Oh, no, I didn't. There we go. So, but if you stay in levels longer, you're actually hitting more stuff, which means you're getting more gold, which means you can buy better things, including things like, for example, you can buy permanent stoppers if you want. If you can actually amass 30,000 gold, you can buy a set of stoppers that will block both sides on a permanent basis, which makes progressing through the more difficult levels a heck of a lot easier. But at the same time, this game is also rather challenging because, I mean, I kind of stuck my foot in my mouth there. I thought once you got to another level, you could retry it as much as you want, but it looks like I may be mistaken about that. So, this game can actually be quite challenging. Technically, if you're really, really good at this game is pretty short, but it has a decent number of levels with obviously more complicated designs and harder enemies as you go on. So it can be actually quite challenging, and there's no passwords, there's no saving in this, so you gotta really knuckle down and beat this sucker in one sitting if you want to do that. So it's pretty interesting, and it's definitely a cool novelty and a different concept. But you guys know, or maybe you don't, but I'm a big pinball guy. I love me some pinball. I love me some good video pinball. I'm not a purist. I like games that are able to take liberties with the medium of pinball as being in video and not physical form allows. So how is this as a pinball game? There we go. I got my key back. What do I got in terms of money here? Not much. You know what? Let's just leave. Let's not steal this time. I've ripped that dude off enough. Here we go. As a pinball game, it's pretty competent. I'm gonna caveat it as saying it's pretty competent 8-bit video pinball. So what do I mean by that? Well, simply put, on 8-bit consoles, the computing power generally wasn't there to do super realistic ball physics or control. So if you think this is going to play pretty much in any way like a real pinball table, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But to be honest, if you were hoping to find a realistic game of pinball on the NES, I mean, you're kind of crazy. That is really weird. That almost feels like a bug to me. It's very odd. Yeah, you're kind of crazy if you think you're going to find realistic pinball on the NES. It's really just not possible. As an 8-bit pinball game, it's pretty good. The ball is very, very heavy feeling, yet very floaty feeling at the same time, which is kind of odd. But I suspect that's to accommodate the level design as it exists, and that's fine. I don't really mind that. You can definitely compensate for it. The two things I think if I were to find faults with it, well, maybe three things. I don't think the music in this game is bad. I think it's kind of decent, catchy NES music, but it is very repetitive. It does change, but it is a pretty short loop for each level, which is a bit of a bummer and might annoy some people. I also really think Tosei could have done more with the color palette on the NES. This game doesn't look bad from a graphical artistic standpoint necessarily, but alright, I'm gonna buy something this time. Can you afford a flipper upgrade? Let's try a strong flipper. Wait, what? Yeah, I do. Oh, it's 40,000. I thought that was 4,000. I was dyslexic. Alright, let's do this. So, yeah, I would have liked to have seen them do more with the color palette. If any of you guys are familiar with old school PC gaming, you might think that this looks a lot like a CGA game, which is to say a game that is based off of only a 4-color palette. And I would tend to agree with that. Like, the first level was very straight up primary green and brown. This, you know, that level with the area with the shop is just very bright blue. This is extreme gray. You know, as you can see, it's really not man. As you can see, this gets pretty tricky. It's really not all that. Oh, that's lame. I also really don't like that. I think that's a little too punitive. The color they could have done more with. The dialogue that I've seen, I mean, it's a pinball RPG. I mean, you don't expect grand stories or writing necessarily, but it actually is translated reasonably well, which I'll give them credit for. That's nice to see. And excuse me. And my biggest thing is that, yeah, the levels do feel a little bit constrained, as you're seeing here. I appreciate that if you made the levels super large, it would probably make this game even more kind of frustrating than it already is. But at the same time, yeah, it's pretty... It's definitely very constrained. But it's going for a particular idea, right? So I don't really fault them for that. The levels need to be... Jeez, I suck at this. But the levels do need to be constrained to a certain point in order to make this something where you're going to be able to rapidly fire back and forth between levels as well. So I can kind of understand that as well. But yeah, it's just not... I don't know. It just doesn't... it's cool and it feels like a neat novelty, but it's so punitive in terms of the way the progression goes that I could see myself getting really frustrated with this really, really quickly. But I like what they were going for here. It was a cool idea, and if this could have gotten a sequel where they could have maybe expanded on the concepts they had, I think it would have been pretty neat. But so you've got the very basic idea of the core RPG mode at least there. So we're gonna go back now. We're gonna go back to the main menu now, and I'm gonna show you just quickly the standalone pinball tables that are in this, which are really just there as value adds. They're not really all that impressive, but I'll show you what those look like. So let's go check that out. Okay. So we got Pop Pop, Viva Golf, or rather Viva Golf, and Circus. Yeah. Can do them up to 4 players. Same screen, obviously, which is kind of cool. It's just alternating, but, you know, kind of cool that it keeps the separate scores there, I guess. So this is actually where things are kind of cool. Again, this is another table that takes sort of liberties that video pinball offers. So as you can see, there's things like bowling pins that you can hit out of here. There's a mini game in the left side of the screen there where you actually kind of play snooker with the cue ball, which is kind of cool. And again, it's 8-bit video pinball, so I mean you're not gonna be able to expect a ton in terms of physics or expansive level design, but they do some neat stuff with what they have. And you know what, they probably could have sold, given the length and brutal difficulty of it, they probably could have sold. Oh, here's the snooker game. They probably could have sold the RPG mode of this game on its own and probably been fine with it. Let's see if we can hit these in. Nah, scratched out. But they added these in as well, just as a little value add. They were like, hey, here's some just straight up pinball to go along with your Quest mode as well. And that's cool. I'll give them credit for that. I like that. So there's Pop Pop. Let's go Viva Golf! That lady really looks like she did something horrible to her back, but those bumpers look extremely menacing, don't they? Why are there pig snouts in the ground? I know that's not what they are, but that is kind of what they look like. Water hazard. So you see, this is cool. It's another neat theme table. Basically turning pinball into golf or crossing it with golf, which is cool. I like that. This is what I like about the idea of video pinball. I love real pinball tables as well, but I like the fact that, yeah, when you are able to work with a video game and you're allowed to do crazy weird stuff that you couldn't get away with the laws of physics being what they are, it allows you to do some cool stuff and different ideas, which I like about this one. All right, let's quickly try that again because I kind of bailed out on that one quick. I like this. I mean, it's cool. And yeah, compared to some stuff like, you know, NES Pinball and other games out there, this is pretty cool. I mean, in terms of attention to detail and mechanics and stuff, I'll say this is no Pinbot, but at the same time, Pinbot was a full-priced game that offered only 1 table, whereas this offers 3 tables plus an entire RPG mode. So it may not be as detailed, the production values may not be as high, but you could argue that this is better value for money. Because this is definitely not a bad pinball game. You know, these are cool tables. These were value add and the RPG mode is the meat of the sandwich, but these are definitely not throwaway or poorly designed at all. you know, as 8-bit rudimentary video pinball goes, this is pretty fun. I like this. Alright. Actually doing much better this time, though. So you get the idea of that one anyway, so... let's bail out of this one here, I think. And I will show you the last one. Multiplayer mode in this is kind of neat as well. I mean, multiplayer in a pinball game was always weird. Really, all it is just kind of a one-shot per game leaderboard, you know, where you have multiple people taking turns just to see who can get the best score. It's never really the most engaging thing because 3 people are sitting around while 1 person plays, which is not necessarily all that enthralling, but, you know, it's there. It's cool. It's nice they did that. Alright, there we go. And this is Circus. This is definitely the one that I would say is the most visually eye-burning. As you can, like I said earlier, I really do think that Tosei could have made better use of the NES's color palette with this game. I think there are too many. I think there's too many plain colors, not enough variety, not enough of just not enough of a mix. And it just doesn't feel very artistic. The color choices seem very, very flat and very, very simple. And this one is definitely the most obnoxious of the 3 standalone tables. And I mean, I'm actually squinting playing this because this is really, really bright. And it just doesn't look that attractive. Like, you've got bright colors on top of bright colors. There's very little... I mean, there is contrast, but it feels like the wrong kind of contrast. Like, you know... character that's orange and white on a bright blue background, just, I don't know, it just strikes me as more painful than artistic. It just doesn't, it just kind of feels like the visual design of this game sometimes was an afterthought, which is a little bit of a shame because, as Pinbot demonstrated, you can have some frankly stunning visuals on the NES with the hardware that you had at your disposal. And given that this game came out, I think, later actually than Pinbot on the NES, kind of isn't really a good excuse for that. I don't know what budget Tosei had to work with this game. Probably wasn't huge, but nonetheless, it's definitely a strike against it. It's not going to win any awards for visuals, that's for sure. But yeah, this is Circus. This one's okay. This thing here, the slot machine, is kind of a novel idea, I suppose. If I had my druthers between the 3, I would probably say Viva Golf is the most interesting one for me. But they're all kind of neat, and the quest mode is cool. I'd actually like to put some more time into the RPG mode. I do think it's a little punishing and punitive, for sure. It doesn't need to be that tough, but nonetheless, I think it's pretty cool. So... but this is a neat gem you should definitely check out. Unfortunately, it's not available on any digital service that I'm aware of, so you're probably going to have to get yourself a cartridge if you want to play this game. The fact that Jaleco no longer really exists as a video game company is probably a good chunk of the reason behind that. So, but it's an interesting novelty, and I think it was a cool idea. Not executed badly, considering what it is. I think it could have been... I think it could have done more. I think it could have been less mean about how you progress through it. All problems that could have been solved if it could have got a sequel. But sadly it didn't. So... but it's a neat idea, and one of those neat, rare NES titles that is cool to check out. So that is Pinball Quest, published by Jaleco and developed by Tosei Software in 1990 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Cool idea, could have been better than it is. My name's been Parallax Abstraction. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.